Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Erin Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, helping driven, experienced professionals remove career roadblocks to achieve more impact, income, and influence. And today on Career Coffee Chat, we have Sherri joining us to talk about how to leverage recruiter relationships. So a little bit about Sherri. Sherri is an experienced recruiter for Riverway Jobs here in Houston, Texas. And she has an international presence because she's joining us all the way from Denmark. And I'm super excited to have Sherri on the show today to talk about how to leverage recruiter relationships. The number one question I get as a coach, oftentimes from professionals seeking jobs or considering a new opportunity, is how do I align with a recruiter? Should I hire a recruiter? So what we'll do today is we will debunk some of those common career myths around recruiters, what recruiters do and what they don't do, and most importantly, how a recruiter can help you, the job seeker or someone who is looking for a new opportunity, successfully land that opportunity. And most importantly, what are recruiters looking for from job seekers like yourself, and how can you give them the information they need to help you be successful? So help them help you be successful. If you're just tuning in, my name again is Erin Urban or Coachy Urban. You can find all about me on coachyurban.com. And when you're hopping on, please do say your name, where you're from. I'd love to say hi to you, welcome you to the show. And if you've never been on the show before, this is Career Coffee Chat Show Live. I also have a Career Coffee Chat podcast on all the major channels, including YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, etc. And I won't go into the list. There is quite a list. And I would love to know more about you. So when you're tuning in today, what is your top question you want to ask Sherri when she hops on? So please do say hi, say where you're from, and I'd love to hear from you this morning. Donnie's, great to have you in. She's tuning in from Facebook. And for those of you just tuning in, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Give a shout out in the house if you're on either one of those. And please do say your name, where you're from. I'd like to say hi to you this morning on Career Coffee Chat Live. Jesse, nice to see you from Fulshire. Gail, love to see you from Houston. Caitlin, love to have you join us. Good morning, Cornetia on LinkedIn. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Sherri in. Now, again, Sherri is an amazing recruiter and just a wonderful person. And I'm so excited and thrilled that she has taken some time with us today to share with us how to leverage recruiter relationships. Hi, Sherri.
Hi, Erin. Good. How are you this morning?
Yeah, glad to see you. So we have a whole host of people who have already joined us this morning. We have Jesse, Donnice, Gail, Caitlin from Richmond, Texas. We have Cornetia. We have, Caitlin says good morning to you.
Good morning.
Christine, Linda from Keenwood, Texas. Someone else has said hi from LinkedIn. Occasionally I can't see the names. I don't know why. Cindy's joined us again from Houston. And Sherri, share with us a little bit about your background. I've just mentioned really quickly, those joining in, that you're an experienced recruiter and you love helping people land the jobs that they love. So tell me a little bit about you and what is your passion for recruiting? What drew you to recruiting?
Yeah, definitely. Well, Erin, thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to be on the show. I've known you for quite some years and I admire you greatly. So thank you for this opportunity. I've been in recruiting for about 15 years now. I've joined Riverway Business Services back 12 years ago, kind of as a baby recruiter, I like to think of myself as. I did a lot of industrial recruiting at that point. And some clerical, and then moved to Houston, met Margot, our president, and kind of fell from there. I think the thing that really drove me to Riverway and into Margot and to stay into recruiting, especially on the agency side, was that you really can make a difference in people's lives. We focus in administrative recruiting, as well as a few other sectors, accounting and finance and customer service. And when I first started, customer service and administrative were my two favorite sectors to recruit within, because you able to make a connection for someone and then you see them grow in their career. And that's, I think, it's what really is the passion, is you make that connection, you can provide some tips along the way, but that person really, really does change their life based on that connection you made for them. And so that's why I get up every day and do what I do and talk to people and go through things, because I really want someone to put food on the table for their child, or just, get the next step in their career that they're looking for.
That's great, Sherri. Thank you for sharing that journey. Because I know that about you, that you're such a warm and caring person. So that's one of the reasons I reached out to Sherri first. I want to have a recruiter on. I'm going to ask Sherri. So
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Holly's joined us. Amy has joined us from San Antonio, Texas. Hi, Amy. Glad to have you join us. And remember, for those of you just hopping on from YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, please do say hi, say where you're from, and your questions. We will be pausing from time to time to answer your questions about how to leverage recruiter relationships. What are some of those questions that you have that are burning that you've always wanted to ask a recruiter? And Sherri, I don't know about you, but as I shared before we opened the show, was that I get the biggest question is, I'm a job seeker, should I hire a recruiter? So there's a few myths running around about recruiters, and I'd love to hear from your perspective. Hiring a recruiter, that's probably not something a job seeker does. And
exactly.
How do recruiters work? So we just understand that foundational level of what a recruiter does.
It's great. And it's a great question. Before I got into recruiting myself, I remember I interviewed at an agency, and they wanted me to go on another position. I'm like, wait, no, I want to work here. Like, I don't understand this process. So whenever I talk to someone too, and if they've never worked with a recruiter before, I try to set some guidelines, because it's a little bit different. You don't hire a recruiter per se. You start a relationship with a recruiter. And recruiting in today's day and age is so different than it was 15 years ago when I started. Each recruiter really has specific industries or fields that they recruit within. So for example, I really focus in accounting and finance and administrative. So if someone came to me and said that they are a engineering tech, they want me to find them a job, I probably, because it's not the industry nor the field that I really focus in. And so if someone's looking for working with a recruiter, they need to make sure that recruiter works in their field, in their industry. Otherwise, the connections that recruiter has is not going to benefit that candidate. Mm-hmm. And I think that's sometimes where candidates get frustrated, where you didn't find me a job, but I don't work in that space. I don't have connections in that space. I can't find you a job in that space if the companies you work with do not hire in that space. So it's really making sure that they hire within that space. The recruiter hires within that space. Mm-hmm. But you don't hire a recruiter, really. As I mentioned, the companies pay the recruiter the money. So that's where the financial transaction comes from. But without candidates, you don't have anything. So candidates are just as important to a recruiter as their clients are. Because I always say, and this is kind of cheesy maybe, but I think of myself as a career matchmaker. Not every company is the right fit for every candidate, and vice versa. So it's really trying to find that match and finding that recruiter that's going to work well with you. I like to talk a lot. I'm not a big texter. Some candidates don't want me to text them, but I'm going to pick up the phone and call you. And if that annoys you, probably not the right person to work with. And there's probably people at my firm that don't want to talk as much as I want to talk. So it's just funny. It's even as small as that, is how do you like to communicate with someone? And so it's just, there's different areas to really look at when you're trying to find a recruiter that is going to have your best interest at heart and be able to create those connections that you're looking for.
Right. And there's different types of recruiters too, because the type of recruiting that you do is more, I would have to say, personalized.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily the case, particularly with what I call the big box recruiting houses.
Yes.
Individuals. And you probably got a call. So, just type in the chat if you know what I'm talking about here. But you get that call and 3 sentences in. So how much money do you want to make? Or how much money do you make? Or better yet, tell me what's on your W-2. True story. Exactly. That has been said to several of my clients, particularly around tax time. And then it's like, we just want to know this. We want to get off the phone, bam, bam, bam. Yeah. That's because these individuals are probably from the big box recruiting firms, and they're paid commission based on the ideal candidate being put forward because they have a job rec that's open. Otherwise, they don't give you the time of day. What are your thoughts about that, Sherri?
Yeah, we don't like them. I consider I consider them the Walmarts of the recruiting world, because it's creating that person's just another metric, whereas it's another conversation. So we work with some bigger companies. Our ideal clients are mainly mid-size, where we get to actually talk to the hiring managers. Those are the clients we like to work with. But we do work with some bigger companies where we work with maybe 5 or 6 or 7 to 10 other agencies. And I can't tell you how many times I have a great candidate, I submit them to a position, and then the company's HR calls me and says, "Oh, Sherri, they've already been submitted." I'm like, "What?" So I call the person, like, "You've already been submitted." Like, "What do you mean I've been submitted?" "Well, some person I talked to 2 weeks ago got their name, number, shot them over in the system, and that candidate didn't even know that they were being submitted somewhere." So that's where I know, and it makes me mad because then I think, well, this person's not going to represent this candidate very well now, or sometimes they submit them to the different position that's a complete mismatch because that recruiter didn't take time to understand what's the pains. What does that person really want in that position? Is that hiring manager the right person to work under? Because if you like to have lots of detail and that person's too much of a big picture, you're going to hate that hiring manager, that manager. You're going to be, yeah, exactly. So it's just, I think, and those recruiters would give the recruiting agencies a bad name. They call us headhunters or, I don't know, just, I've heard some bad things over the years, but I think, and they just don't represent us the way that we do truly work. If you find a good recruiter with a good firm, you should have an exceptional experience with them too.
Right.
And then another thing too, Erin, is sometimes you might have a really good recruiter with with one of those big firms, but you tend to find those recruiters work their way out of those big firms. Because if you work with a boutique firm that I work with, you get to talk the way you want to talk. You get to have personal relationships. The president's never told me, "Sherri, you can't say this," or you need to do this, Sherri. No, me and her have weekly conversations about the relationships and the connections, and that's what it's about, not about the way I sound over the phone. So which is very different.
You ask this question, and you have to check the box, check the box. We have some great questions popping up here, so thank you for sharing that with me, Sherri. Okay. And it's interesting you mentioned that because as a career coach, I know a lot about it, and I really want everyone joining to hear it straight from the source, because I can tell you all day long, okay, there's different types of recruiters, but it's best to hear it straight from a professional like Sherri, so you'll know exactly, why it is you have this unfortunate experience sometimes with recruiters, because we get a lot of bad feedback, all of this, they never bothered to call me back, and that's the big thing, and we'll touch on that here in a moment, but I really would like to answer some of these questions. That's okay.
Good.
Let's see. So one of the big questions that's popped up a couple times is here, how do we find someone in our vertical? So how can we align with someone within our vertical? So this was from someone on Facebook, and the banker asked, how can I find someone in my specific industry? He's in oil and gas engineering, etc. So if you are indeed in a specific industry, how do you even find people? Do you just Google?
Yeah, no, back in the day I did actually, but that was long ago. LinkedIn is your best friend. LinkedIn is everything. Every recruiter should really specify in their bio what they're who do they connect with. And so I think LinkedIn finding, I believe you can do regular filter searches with LinkedIn, but every recruiter should have in their space what they're recruiting for and what they do recruit for. I think number one, that's the best place to go. I don't know if people or the Houston Business Journal in Houston, Texas, is amazing newspaper, and there they usually have the top companies as well. So you look in there, but that's not always the best space to find your recruiter. I think LinkedIn, in my opinion, is probably the best place to start searching and looking. And if you talk to someone too, ask them for referrals. For example, I don't do any IT recruiting at all. I have 2 recruiters, kind of colleagues I work with, that I'll refer them to because I can't make those connections for anyone in IT. So most recruiters should know the people in other verticals that they don't recruit in to help refer some of those candidates too.
Right, exactly. And you can do a search on LinkedIn. I do know that if you have Job Seeker Premium, I think you're limited in how many searches you can do per month. So you need to have a larger payout premium plan. Thanks, LinkedIn. We love you, but but you can do just look at recruiters, because recruiters will reach out to you on LinkedIn and look and see what is their specialty, because recruiters do have specialties. Now, one of the questions here from Linda, she's got quite a lengthy story, and her story is common. Linda here is sharing a lot about how, hey, I had this experience and the recruiter never called me back, and just that rude, unfortunately, big box recruiting experience. Why is it that these recruiters don't call people back? And there's multiple reasons. One, they've got a lot of in-mails, probably 180 a day plus.
Yeah.
And so they can't get back to everybody. But from your perspective, Sherri, can you give some insight as to, obviously there's different types of recruiters.
Yeah.
But why is that, I talk to you and then nothing happens, like I don't hear anything, and you get gaslighted or ghosted?
Definitely. It's probably that recruiter doesn't have the plain and simple, I think, point probably is that recruiter doesn't have a connection to a company or a job to connect you with. If when you leave the phone call, the first initial phone call with that recruiter, you need to ask though, when can I expect to hear from you? Can we connect weekly, bi-weekly? You need to get that expectations guidelines from that very first phone call to understand how that recruiter does communicate. If you don't have those expectations, my suggestion is always reach out to that recruiter. You can email, you can call. Email is usually a bit easier than calling, to be honest. And nowadays, and like I said, some recruiters text. But honestly, I think that most recruiters don't reach out because they just don't have a job opening to connect that person to. That's probably the answer. There could be other things, but more than likely it's because they don't have a job readily available for that person. And they don't want to call and disappoint that candidate that we had a great conversation, but I still don't have anything that I can fit you with. So then they just do that avoidance that you're not supposed to do. I think a lot of it, and you just kind of go down a rabbit hole, unfortunately. So candidates, call your recruiter, email them, try to reach out to them. If they don't reach back out to you, sever that relationship. Don't even think about them. Move on. Go somewhere else.
Find somebody else. A lot of times this happens when people apply for jobs and a recruiter is managing that job rec, and they have the initial screening call, and like Linda shared, we both agreed it wasn't the position for me, and she would say said she'd get back to nothing, like she just hadn't heard anything. So it's just keep reaching out and then do what you can, and then after that, toodles.
And there's a lot. There's a lot of recruiters out there. There's going to be a recruiter that's going to be able to work with you and find that connection for you too. Yeah, and
Marnie has joined us all the way from Chicagoland. Hi, Marnie.
Cool.
Popping in. So someone just asked, and this is a big question of the day. So how do you develop and leverage a recruiter relationship? How do you foster that relationship? Great question. How do you do that?
It's really connecting, creating that relationship. So finding something with that recruiter that's that's not business. So for example, I grew up in Chicago. Anyone I talk to from the Midwest, there's that instant connection, and they stick in my head because it's usually a more dynamic conversation. So the more you can find out about that recruiter before their conversation, the more you can make those connections with them. But also, I think having open conversations with them too, reaching out to them, not sounding negative. I mean, as a recruiter, sometimes you don't always have the best news to give people. You didn't get the position, the hiring manager didn't see the sizzle that I saw in you. So sometimes it's some difficult conversations we have to have, and being positive and open about those conversations usually creates a very long-standing relationship with that recruiter as well, because then it's a partnership at that point. And you can tell it's a give and take. It's not just a push, push, push. And I think sometimes recruiters feel they're pushed a lot by the candidates, where you need to give some, and then you need to take some back as well.
And speaking of that, actually, I have a good story about give and take with a recruiter and how you can develop that relationship with a recruiter like Sherri, who cares about their candidates. And one way to do that is, if you are not the best candidate for that role, feel free to recommend them to someone who is maybe a better candidate. And that way, you're making that recruiter's life easier for them. And by doing that, that recruiter remembers you. And in fact, at one point in my career, I was definitely a go-to person for continuous improvement type roles. Even if it wasn't necessarily for me, this recruiter knew that I was well networked within the industry and that no problem in leveraging that relationship. And that's what it's all about. It's about leveraging the relationship. So I'd be like, yeah, that's not for me, of course, but I know so-and-so might be interested. I'll, share your information with him, vice versa. And that was much appreciated. And it fostered and developed a relationship to the point where, when I was looking.
Yep.
Exactly.
It works so well.
Yeah,
it works so well.
The charm. It works like a charm. So if anybody else has any questions, please do pop them in the chat. Because the next thing I would love to hear from you, Sherri, is what else can a job seeker do? So we know recruiters have a lot on their plate right now. There's not a lot of open job requisitions this second. And there's a lot of people looking. And we understand the emotional investment in this because as a recruiter who cares, it's hard. It's a hard place to be in. So what can a job seeker do to help a recruiter help them?
Reach out to them, not on I would say, well, for me, it'd be every other week. But try to have, as mentioned too, a different kind of conversation as well. A quick email, hey, this is Sherri. I saw this lead last week. Do you work with this company? So try to have different conversations rather than I'm available. I know you're available because you're sending me you're available, but having more of that dialogue together. And I think especially now during this pandemic, asking how they're doing. I have a family, I have a life. I might have people that are affected, and rarely do recruiters get asked, how are we doing sometimes? So having a genuine conversation with them when you do get the chance to connect with them as well goes a huge way. But I think stop waiting for them to call you and be proactive. Call them, email them, shoot them a LinkedIn message, connect with them on LinkedIn as well too, because that's where I think you make even further connections if you can lever yourself, through LinkedIn. Facebook, probably not. Facebook is only if you know each other for a few years, then you can do the Facebook request. But LinkedIn is a professional business network where it's great for you to connect on that area as well too. Also, I know as a recruiter, I'm really interested in seeing any articles on recruiting or HR in general, or any conferences. I know everything's virtual now, but there's a lot of content that's in this world, and I don't know all the content. And so if someone can help give me some content as well too, that really does make that impact and help.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually some of the basics of networking.
Yeah.
And building relationships, making sure that we share value with people.
Yeah.
Someone asked here, what are her thoughts on cover letters? Are these recommended? Is it a good position? And those from Donnie's. And Donnie's, yes.
Yeah.
A cover letter. It's not always read.
Yeah, it's not. No, they're not read at all, to be honest with you. I had a conversation with someone recently, and they're like, well, did you see my cover letter? I'm like, no, I don't. We just don't. There's so much. There's not enough time to read cover letters. My suggestion to everyone is create a professional summary at the top of your resume, and just as well. So as a recruiter, I'm probably seeing at least 100 resumes a day, at least. So I'm looking for specifics in that resume that matches with the client, the culture, the position, something I'm looking for specifics. And so the professional summary at the top adds so much value. It allows me to really pick apart, what are you looking for? What do you want to do? And then it draws me into further into your resume. If I don't see what I need to see at the top portion of your resume, I'm probably not going to look further at it. I'm just not. I don't have time to hunt, and I shouldn't have to hunt. And I think it's hard for candidates sometimes to really show what they're looking for. And I tell people, have 3 or 4 resumes. Hey, if you're open to different career changes, I mean, Erin, you know way more than I do, but but make sure it's specific and you have that professionalism at the top, a summary at the top, and look at the job description. So if the job description has the requirement section, it requires A, B, C, or D. Make sure A, B, C, or D is in your resume somewhere and mainly at the top of your resume. Because then again, as a recruiter, I don't have to hunt for it. And corporate recruiters, they don't hunt at all. They put algorithms in their system. If those keywords don't come up, you're not going to pop up in front of that corporate recruiter at all. So really taking time to do that professional summary, adding those keywords in, and ensuring the requirement section is covered in your resume, you're going to get through to a lot more recruiters.
I'm sorry, I have a train in the background. The train has made its debut on Career Coffee Chat Show today. Thank you very much.
We love the train.
So that's out of the way for now, unless he backs up and goes back and forth again. So what are your thoughts about, from what I understand, some hiring managers do require cover letters, or some internal HR managers like to see that there was a cover letter created, even if they have no intentions of reading it, because it's true, people don't read cover letters very often. But it is a check the box mentality. So what are your thoughts, particularly with different types like engineering, for example? These types of people really are data oriented. So know your vertical, know your industry, know what's expected. But don't spend a lot of time on your cover letter. Whatever you do, while you need to have the check the box mentality. If there's space for one, add one, but don't tailor your whole
cover letter to the job.
Don't tailor it to the job in the cover letter. That has to be in the resume. Like Sherri just said, the first half of that first page is absolutely critical, and making it relevant to the job description is. I mean, that's how I train and coach all my clients in how to develop resumes, is that first half of that first page has to be absolutely aligned. Now, it's interesting you mentioned summaries, Sherri, because I've heard from some recruiters, now everybody's different. This is the other thing we have to keep in mind, because as job seekers, you hear tons of different information, and well over half of it's all wrong. Like one-page resumes.
No, it doesn't have to be at all. Cut yourself short.
Yeah, I mean, how are you ever going to make it through applicant tracking system with a one-page resume? You can't. So that's a myth. So your thoughts about a summary, because I've heard that that's passé. Nobody reads them.
Well, your summary needs to be, summary can't be, I am a forward-thinking individual. I am great communication skills. That blah, blah, blah. Tell me why you're a forward-thinking individual. Why do you have great communication skills? Give me some meat from your experience and put it up there. It's kind of, I call it your sizzle. If you have a 30-second, your 30-second elevator pitch, you just don't sizzle, you go cover yourself. You really try to go with the impact. So that summary needs to be that impact, with examples of why they need to look at you further. It could be years of experience, but be careful on that too sometimes. But it could be, why are you stellar in your profession? If you can't answer that though, you probably got to sit down and go through this. Go through your pros and cons. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. I know why I'm a good recruiter, but I also have weaknesses. I know what those are. But in my professional summary, it's going to be my strengths. But it's going to be an impact kind of examples to kind of illustrate those strengths that I have, 100%.
Right. What can you bring to the organization?
Yeah.
And you're spot on in the sales pitch, because that's exactly what I tell my clients. Yeah. That summary is just your sales pitch, your opportunity to tell the hiring manager what value you're going to bring and what impact you're going to make for that organization. So absolutely. And tailor it to the job description. But you're spot on. I mean, those empty adjectives like hard work ethics. Yeah. Okay.
Great. More.
More. That's it for me. I mean, just think of it as you're selling yourself. So those are all great comments. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And then we've also heard that recruiters really don't read the whole resume.
We don't. And I can't say we. I don't.
It's pretty much everybody.
And I'm such a bullet person too. Resumes that are in paragraphs for the job, under the job, if they're in a paragraph, sometimes it just hurts my eyes, because I'm looking at so many resumes on a daily basis. So short and sweet bullet points is the best. But if I don't see what I need to see in that top portion of that resume, then I don't look any further. But it also depends though. So, I recruit in specific industries and I recruit for specific fields. So sometimes this person may look stellar. I don't have a job for them, but I'm still going to call that person because down the road, hopefully in the few months, I'm going to have something for them and hopefully make a connection. But again, it's from what I see from that resume. But no, they don't see, you don't read the whole resume. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Now, I had to mute myself again because now, after the train has left, the neighbor has started to mow their yard.
You gotta love live sessions. That's the beauty of these, though. That's what makes it
fun. We are really real here on the Career Coffee Chat Show. You get real life. It's pretty funny. So share with me what other questions you have for those of you tuning in to the show. Would love to hear your questions, your comments, your thoughts, your concerns. We'll be on for a few more moments, but we'll definitely want to capture those before we wrap up, because we do have one more curious question for Sherri. So Sherri, how, we've talked about, first half of the first page and the resume being so important. We've talked about the summary being so important, and making that a sales pitch, not a boring list of obituaries. You mentioned and touched on a very interesting point, which was years of experience can help you or hurt you. You can't overprice yourself out of the job, so be careful with that and think relevance. You want to align yourself with that position. If they're asking for 15, you have 30. Probably telling them you have 30 years is not good. Exactly. So we want to be relevant to the job, just the job description. But what else can the job seeker do to help a recruiter help them? And outside of maybe the resume, what else is there other than reaching out frequently? Maybe polishing one's interview skills to show up like they do for you to the hiring manager. What else can they do?
Well, yeah, that's a really good point. So I think, especially today in this pandemic we're all living through, these virtual settings are so important, because as a recruiter, when I represent you to one of our clients, one of our companies, it's basically me saying you need to talk to this person, and I have a relationship with that hiring manager. So if it doesn't go well, it's usually looks bad on me. So I want to make sure that you're going to show up ready, you're going to show up prepared, you're not going to be in pajamas. You're going to be bright-eyed, excited. You're going to have the job description in front of you. You're going to have your resume in front of you. You're going to ask relevant questions that we discussed, that we talked about, and you're going to be engaging in that interview. Looking at, there's a lot of good content out there now on virtual interviewing because it's so relevant. And virtual sometimes space is not the right space for everyone. Sometimes I talk with my hands. I have to keep those down during my interview, during my virtual communications, or maybe I'm not as energetic over virtual. When you see me in person, you can feel that warm fuzzy, but maybe I'm a little bit more stern virtual. So think about, practice with yourself. Take your iPhone and start talking to yourself. Take videos of yourself, practicing some of those skills, and see how you relay communication back, because that's what's being received on the other side. So show up to those interviews, in the talks with the recruiter. Bring your A game. It's just as important you bring your A game to that recruiter as it is to that hiring manager, because otherwise they're not going to proceed forward with you.
Right. That same spark you show the recruiter, you definitely want to bring that to the hiring manager. And some people get nervous, and that's totally understandable. Doing a little bit of stress management, maybe taking a walk, doing a little bit of breathing exercise, clearing your mind, or pretending like you don't care. And it's not that we want to just, act lackadaisical in the interview, but sometimes, not caring actually helps you be you.
100%.
Is when we're super stressed out, we're in fight or flight, that directs all our energy to a physical response, not mental. So our cognitive function actually slows down to heighten our physical function. And then inevitably after the interview, you go, oh man, I wish I'd said whatever, because we just can't think clearly. Yeah. So let's see. Someone had a couple of questions here. We have a question here from Facebook. How far back in ancient history does one work? Do you go? Now, I don't know about you, Sherri, but I tell people around about the year 2000 is probably as far as you want to go. Do you agree with that?
20 years. I always think 20 years back.
Yeah, 20 years back. No further.
Unless they're going for a really senior leadership position, though, and that experience can then enhance that. Or sometimes, too, if you've been out of the career field for a while because you've been, stay-at-home mom, you did something else, and you have relevant experience, then you could add that back in there and kind of create not a chronological resume, but a skill functional resume where you put your skills together. So, but 20 years usually is good enough for the resume.
Right. And anything past that, you can always handle that in an additional experience section. Remove the dates and just focus on the impacts and leave that for the interview. Because after all, a resume is just to incite a conversation, not close the conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a two-way street. You've got to make sure you like that hiring manager as well, because that's who you're going to be working underneath. And most people leave managers, not companies. So if you don't like that manager you're interviewing with, go with your gut. It's probably not the right match for you.
That's right. That's right. In fact, I have a client who is having a very interesting conundrum because she has great relationships where she is. She's in oil and gas. However, as we all know, oil and gas is not doing so well right now. And she's been looking for opportunities elsewhere, accepted a position to only find out that her potential hiring manager is not a pleasant person to work with. Yeah. So I said, you know what? If you have great relationships where you are now,
stay.
Stay.
Stay. Do not make that jump.
Keep looking. So Patricia has a good question here. She said, how can you be relevant when job posts such as VP of Marketing ask for only 5 to 7 years, even though the rest of the description asks for so much more? Interesting point, Patricia. People right now are trying to get all the bang for the buck. Wouldn't you agree, Sherri? We're seeing some interesting
100%.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really asking for a lot.
We call this a client-driven market. So even, I would say, fall of last year, we called it a candidate-driven market, where there's not enough candidates looking for jobs, where now it's flip-flops. So we call it a client-driven market, which is the least favorite market for, I think, anyone to work in, because they want 20 years of experience, but they want to pay 5-year salary for it. It's hard. I've been a recruiter for so long, I have those relationships where I can then kind of see points, whereas if you're a candidate, you don't know really what they're looking for on that end. I don't lie on your resume ever. Never lie on your resume, because it's not going to be the right fit. You can withhold a couple things maybe here and there, but I would show my full. In all honesty, if I'm if at a mid-level professional, I would show all my experience then, my 20 years of experience, if I'm applying for 5 to 7 years, because then I may not be the right fit for that job, but there may be another opening down the road with that company.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting when you do interview more, the better you get at it, and you may build a relationship, because even though you might not be the best fit for that specific role, they may call you back for a different and maybe better role. So don't hesitate to apply. And the other thing, Sherri, that we're seeing, unfortunately, is that some employers are taking advantage of job seekers, and like Desmond reached out to me just day before yesterday as a response to one of my emails I send out to my career growth community a couple times a month. I don't inundate people, but send some information and let people know to be on this show. But he shared with me, he said, we're back to 2009 salary. He goes, this is crazy. I took a huge cut. And it's sad, because it's just sad. I mean, we would like it to be otherwise.
Yeah. I think so. So it's unfortunate, because you've worked so long to build your career to a certain level, and now you're asked to make half of what you were making. I think sometimes, so during an interview process, when you're going through the interview process, when it's the right time to discuss compensation, maybe ask, what is the trajectory of this role look like? So to really cover compensation, when does the compensation review come in? Do you have annual compensation reviews? Is there a bonus potential? What's the growth potential for this position? Because normally, if you start a position at 40,000, you're going to stay 40,000 for a while. I say never expect more than a 3,000 or 3% pay increase per year, unless there's growth potential. So if you start at, I don't know, marketing associate 1, but you can become a marketing graphic something, I don't know, like there's that growth, then you can make more money. But I think you need to ask those questions when the compensation review. What does it look like? Is there bonus potential? You need to know all of that because some companies are just hurting right now. They want to offer more, they can't, but then they're the ones that will have that growth lined out for you. The ones that just are not offering more, those ones unfortunately are probably taking advantage, and then you're going to jump ship in 2 to 3 years, and they know that because they've probably been through this already.
Yeah, they're not even having a conversation now with you. Just know that they have no intentions of giving you money. And if they are having that conversation now, this is where we're at right now, for potential for growth, or maybe a salary increase once the economic situation looks a little bit better, then you might want to have that language written down somewhere.
Thank you. 100%, Erin. That's bingo.
Yeah,
bingo.
Because I have been there as a young professional. I got promised some things and never had it written down.
And then you're just screwed. Excuse my language. Yeah, then you're out of.
No,
sorry, I said that.
Fine. We're Coffee Chat. We're still PG-13. So let's see. Al says, do they really hold your resume? And I'm assuming he means recruiters for other potential future openings. Good one. Yes, I would agree.
100%, Al. Yeah, no. So our database is basically the connections that I've spoken to over the years. So if we have a connection, you send me your resume, you are going into my database. And you're in there, and it may be 6 months, it may be 3 months, it may be 2 weeks, maybe the next day that I'm going to call you. But yeah, as soon as you send your resume to the recruiter and have that connection call, you go into that database. And most agencies nowadays use cloud-based databases that are easy to filter and find people. And it's like, remember the old school Rolodex business cards? You used to have, my dad used to have them. I see them on his desk. But that's basically what the database is now. So I know agency recruiters hold resumes because that's how we make our connections. I don't know about corporate talent acquisition professionals. So I don't know how long your resume stays in those databases. I don't know what that.
Yeah, I think we do have a time frame, and if it's the applicant tracking system, you can actually go in and manage your application status, also update your resume, et cetera, et cetera. So they have ATS systems, but you have to keep refreshing it within their system, because it does dump after a certain amount of time. That could be 6 months, could be a year, could be 3 years. So I'm not really sure about that, but every recruiter has a database. So just note, Al, that there's a big difference between how Sherri works as a more boutique, personal, relationship-driven recruiter, and then the big box recruiters. There's a big difference. For one, the big box recruiters have tons of more people to pull from, and also they're not as relationship-driven as I've noticed. As more personal touch recruiters. Now, there is another myth out there, Sherri, I would like to clear up. The myth that you can indeed hire this person called a headhunter or a recruiter, which they're not. They call themselves a headhunter. To find a job for you. You pay them money to find a job. Now, I know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about these.
You don't pay anyone to find a job for you unless you are a C-level executive. Even then, you probably shouldn't. You should be using your own network to find your own job. But no, we're considered most agencies are considered a contingent-based agency. What that means is that our clients, the companies, pay us money. So so you as a candidate, there'll never be a transaction between, we're taking money from you whatsoever. Taxes, if you're on our payroll, we have to take taxes, that kind of thing. But you should never pay anyone to find you a job, because it's just not the way the relationship works. It works, the financial transactions happen between our company, the recruiting company, and the company you're contracting at. Never from you. You don't pay for that. You shouldn't have to pay for that, in my opinion.
Right. And what I tell people is, if someone reaches out to you and says, "Oh, just pay me whatever, and I'll find you a job. I'll spruce up your resume, or I'll give you access to all these secret jobs that no one else has access to. Run, do not walk to the nearest exit, because this person is a scammer." And I do know of people in Houston, the Houston metro area, that do this, and they scam job seekers for a lot of money. And because this is a public platform. I cannot say their name. But if you'd like to know who it is, I'm happy to share that information. You can IM me or email me or email me. I'm happy to share that information.
And so, Erin, on that note too, so some people are, because as you mentioned, we're living in this big internet world and stuff. If you're uncomfortable thinking, well, is this person, if you feel that you don't know how the interaction works, ask that recruiter. Who pays the bill? Just ask them who pays the bill, and they can tell you the company pays the bill. You don't pay anything. If they don't tell you that, like Erin said, walk away 100%, because you don't want to be stuck in a weird situation at all.
Yeah. You don't want anything not legitimate.
Exactly.
So someone from Facebook asked, are there any other do's and don'ts that we need to keep in mind as a person who's seeking new opportunities, how to leverage a recruiter relationship? What does that look like? Is there anything we haven't talked about yet that you'd like to share with those that are joining in?
Definitely. Well, I have an interviewing tip. I'm gonna lose if I don't say it now. And I'll go back to the do's and don'ts and working with recruiters. But the biggest interviewing tip that I learned is that before you go to your interview, make sure you write down your strengths or the biggest attributes you acquire from that company, or what value you bring to certain companies. Write everything down on a piece of paper the night before, because normally if it's been 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, that has gone to your long-term memory. And so if you write it down, you're pushing it up to your short-term memory, and under stress, we can't tap into that long-term memory. But if you push it to your short-term memory, when you're interviewing, we're all a bit anxious. Most of us are. You'll be able to get that context back faster than you would if you didn't take the night before and push it to your short-term memory.
Good.
Yeah, definitely. But so tips with working with recruiters too: be proactive. I kind of mentioned that already. Reach out to them, but not too much. Don't sound too pushy, because they aren't required to find you a job. We're required to make a match for our clients, for the companies, but we want to make a match for you too. So if I don't have a position for you, I just don't have a match at that point. And I can't stress that enough, because you don't want to just get a job. You're going to be looking in a year, 6 months. You'll be miserable. And I never want to place someone in a position they're going to be miserable in. So it's important to, as a recruiter, as a candidate looking, ask that recruiter, how long have you worked at that company? Do you know the hiring manager? Have you spoken to the hiring manager? Start asking some of those questions as well, because we don't get the opportunity to speak with all of our hiring managers, but the ones that I do speak with and that I do have relationships with, I can probably find that stricter match faster and know that you're going to be a better fit. And just take if I say it's not going to work, it's just not going to work, and take my advice and just be okay with it. Because sometimes it's one of those soft skill things that just, or a personality mismatch, and that's hard to kind of, it's a hill you don't want to climb in a new position. So take the tip.
One of the number one reasons why most people quit jobs, actually. As a career coach, I can tell you with the fact that work style mismatches are a big deal, and it can be a very toxic environment. Definitely. So, someone like Sherri, who has a lot of experience doing this and knows how to spot these warning signs, don't get mad.
Exactly. Don't be mad at me.
She's trying to help you avoid a very potentially toxic environment. So,
yeah. And also your resume too. I know that you're probably so tired of changing your resume, doing this to your resume, because I know that we all ask different things for your resume, but I'm asking that because I know this hiring manager, and I know if this thing is not the top of your resume and each of your positions that you have, they're not going to look at you. I know it. So take the advice of the recruiter. If you have a good relationship with them, and make those adjustments on your resume and work with them. We may need to send the resume back 4 or 5 times. But trust that recruiter that's giving you that advice, because they're doing it for your benefit, to hopefully make that best match for you.
Right. And those suggestions to tweak on your resume are totally personal for that particular hiring scenario. It's not really meant to say, okay, from here on out to infinity and beyond, you should make these changes. It's just know that in order to put this forward and put your best foot forward and be seen and be heard, this is the best way to proceed 100%. With your documents. Or, sometimes recruiters will even share something personal about, nothing too deeply personal, but something
Yeah.
will help you connect better with the person you're interviewing
Yeah.
with. So yeah. So we'll probably wrap up here in just a few moments. But Sherri, are you open to connecting with anybody that has tuned in to watch this Career Coffee Chat live show?
Yes, please do. I'd love to connect and answer any further questions, talk about your experience, and see if I can maybe hopefully make some connections for you. I would really appreciate that, yes, Erin.
Yeah, wonderful. So reach out to Sherri. Her information will be in the event description, of course, and you can reach her at riverwayjobs, I believe, .com. It's also in the event description. Yeah. I got that wrong. And if you would like to learn more about the Career Coffee Chat show, or have someone that you really love to see on the Career Coffee Chat show and know something about careers and career growth, please reach out to me. You can email me via LinkedIn or email me at coachyurban@gmail.com. Or find me at coachyurban.com. And I'm so thrilled to have you on, Sherri. It's been a deep pleasure. So thankful you could give up your time. I know it's a little late there on the other side of the pond, and a little hot, guys. Those of you from Houston, Texas, it's 90 what in Denmark right now?
Yeah, 91 here and no air conditioning. So we're just working through it.
Unfortunately, that part of the world is not used to these temperatures.
No.
That's pretty awful. So thank you so much for taking the time, Sherri. It's been wonderful hearing from you from the perspective of someone who not only is a wonderful recruiter, but also truly cares about your clients and making that match happen. And it's not cheesy at all if you feel like a career matchmaker, and that's true. So if you loved this show and you would like to share this with your network, make sure you can help those that are potentially looking for opportunities. Please do share this show. Would love to have you do that, and make sure we spread the word and help everybody out there, because there's a lot of people who need to have career growth opportunities as well. And again, this is Career Coffee Chat. My name is Erin Urban. This is Sherri, and we're very happy to see you today. Very happy to have you tune in. And if you are watching later and you do have a question, feel free to pop it in the comments. I will be notified, and Sherri will probably be notified too, because she's tagged on this event. So we'll be able to answer any questions you have. Hi, Venice. She said thank you, and we'll be tuning off for now. We'll see you next week.